Senator Ted Cruz is our guest. Senator?
Michael, good to be with you.
Just water and milk? That's all y'all can have?
That's it, and I'll tell you, it's a funny story. Do you know why we can have milk?
Why?
Because in the 1960s, Everett Dirksen was speaking on the Senate floor, and he inquired of the presiding officer, said, "Do the Senate rules prohibit their bringing me a glass of milk?" And the presiding officer said, "No, the Senate rules do not prohibit a glass of milk." And so it is a precedent now written into the rules that you can have a glass of milk because the presiding officer made that ruling 40 years ago.
That's awesome.
Or more.
What about coffee?
No coffee. So you can have water or milk. And in fact, the first night of the trial, right at midnight, I had a glass of milk. I think I was the first senator to do it. I went back in the cloakroom and I said, "All right, so do we have any milk here?" And you know, the kids who worked behind the cloakroom were really good guys. They looked at me and said, no one has milk. No one wants milk. I said, "Is there any way we can get some?" And so they ran and bought some milk and brought me out my glass of milk. And right at midnight, so I couldn't have coffee. I figured I'd at least have the cream.
Now, there's some slipping. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But apparently, there's a lot of fidget spinning going on. Are you one of the fidget spinners?
You know, I'm not, and the reason for that, so every Thursday, so Republican senators have lunch together Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when we're in session. On Thursday, a different senator hosts each week. And when you host, you typically bring in food from your home state and you put together a gift bag. Well, this week, we had Richard Burr from North Carolina hosted yesterday. And one of the gifts he gave out were these fidget spinners. I don't know. I missed the beginning of the lunch, so I don't know if they're made in North Carolina. I'm guessing, but they're a bunch of fidget spinners. And I got to say, when you're listening to House Democrats drone on for 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 hours in a day, suddenly a whole lot of folks found fidget spinners captivating. I was not one of them, but a lot of senators were.
Has anything happened during this trial that you think has swayed a single person? What is your takeaway so far? I mean, obviously we're all watching, but is there anything that you would say this surprised me?
Well, I do think there was a significant development yesterday, which is that yesterday the House Democrats effectively threw Joe Biden under the bus. And I don't know if they did so on purpose or not, but that was the effect of what they did. And the reason is, they have built their whole case on the proposition that there is utterly no basis to investigate Burisma. That's the big Ukrainian natural gas company that hired Joe Biden, put him on Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, put him on the board and paid Hunter Biden $1 million a year to be on their board. And what the Democrats have argued is there is zero basis to investigate them, to think that there's any corruption with Joe Biden, and that it is phony, that it is fraudulent to want to investigate that. And the only possible reason you could want to investigate that was an improper political motive. Now, I got to tell you, Michael, and you know the facts of this, that is an absurd proposition. And you know, lawyers, when you're litigating a case, there's a phrase called opening the door, which is when one side puts an issue into contention, when one side makes an argument, it opens the door then for the other side to counter it. And what this has opened the door to is for the president's lawyers, starting tomorrow, to lay out in detail the overwhelming indications of corruption that were coming from Burisma. And the vice president's the vice president bragged, and you can watch him on video bragging about how he threatened to withhold $1 billion in aid to Ukraine unless and until they fired the prosecutor that was investigating Burisma, the company that was paying his son $1 million a year to sit on the board.
Do you get a sense that some of these Democrats are embarrassed by this and that they're ready for it to be done? It's not good for them?
Not even the teeniest bit. I think, it is unfortunate. It's a divided time right now. It's a polarized time. I think for congressional Democrats, they hate President Trump so much that it's their all-consuming passion. There's nothing else that they seem to care about other than just attacking the president night and day. Look, they wanted to impeach Donald Trump the day he was elected. Many of these congressional Democrats said so publicly long before he was sworn in, long before a call to Ukraine. This has never had anything to do with Ukraine. This has to do with partisan hatred for Donald Trump. And I think that the rest of the country is appreciative of the positive results. We've got a booming economy. We've got the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We've got the lowest African-American unemployment ever recorded, lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded, wages going up. Our country is safer. We're seeing real results, but I think the congressional Democrats' hate of Trump is their overriding obsession, and I think it's really out of touch with the American people.
How much longer will this trial continue?
So that is an open question. We are going to vote next week on whether or not additional witnesses are permitted. There are a number of us, including me, who think we've heard more than enough. It is clear that this evidence, the House has not proven their case. They have not satisfied the constitutional standard for impeachment, which is proving high crimes or misdemeanors. And so I'm prepared to vote no, we don't need additional witnesses. And if we get 51 senators who say we've heard plenty and this is enough and we can reject the case, then we'll move to final judgment and the president will be acquitted. On the other hand, if 51 senators say we want to hear even more witnesses, that'll be all 47 Democrats, and it might be 4 Republicans. We just don't know. If that happens, the case that I've made to the Republican conference is I've said, if we go down that road, we can't do what the House did. We can't have a one-sided partisan show trial. We need to be fair. We need to be even-handed. We need to respect due process. That means we need to follow the principle of reciprocity. If the prosecution gets a witness, then the defense gets a witness. If the prosecution gets John Bolton, then the defense gets to call Hunter Biden. And I am confident that if we go down the road of witnesses, if we go down the road of witnesses, this trial could last many, many weeks, even months. But if we go down the road of witnesses, I am confident it'll be fair, which means for the first time, President Trump will be able to call witnesses in his defense and lay out the factual case of innocence.
Senator, you're trying to put me out of business with this new podcast, Verdict?
There's always room for more substance and more truth.
And you picked a good guy. Michael Knowles is a good dude, smart guy.
Well, and what I'm doing, so this week we launched a podcast. It's called Verdict with Ted Cruz. Every night after the impeachment trial, I'm jumping in a truck, headed over to the studio, and recording it live right after the trial concludes. So the first night, we didn't get done till 2 in the morning. I recorded this thing at 3 in the morning, and we put it out. It's about a half hour each night, and it's my immediate contemporaneous response. It's my summation of what happened that day, and insights, hopefully, on what was significant. And we're putting it out each night. The website is verdictpodcast.com. And it's designed to help you understand. There's so much swirling around. Help you understand the substance of the facts that are coming out and the constitutional issues that are coming out. I got to say, Michael, it's been a little crazy. We launched this 3 days ago, and in 3 days, it's become one of the top 10 podcasts in the country. And people are downloading it. I think the reason is, cable TV, you turn it on and you just have people yelling at each other. They have little sound bites, and it's hard to understand this stuff. And so what I'm trying to do each night is break it down in real time. Here's what's going on, and here's what it means.
You've suggested in several different ways, I saw the graphic that you posted of the phone and the come and take it, that there's sort of an inability to get the word out, to tell people what's actually going on. And the narrative, it would seem, is being controlled by the CNN types who have their own agenda. To what extent is this a good thing or a bad thing that there's kind of a clamp down on communication, or do you appreciate the fact that the decorum of the institution is being respected?
So I think it is a terrible thing that the media has become just a partisan player, that they don't pretend to be fair journalists anymore. I don't have a problem with the Senate rules governing the trial. That's fine. But the media, there was a time, the Walter Cronkite era where journalists felt some obligation to try to be fair. They don't anymore. That they are rabid partisans. It's one of the great blessings of the era of Trump is he has pointed out fake news, and they've responded by losing their minds and just becoming outright partisans. It's why it's so important to do things like what you do every day, which is going around them, going straight to the people with facts. It's why I launched the podcast this week, Verdict with Ted Cruz, because the media doesn't want to cover the substance. Whatever the House Democrats' narrative is, that's what the media is going to parrot. And I'll give you an example of it. So the podcast that I recorded last night, just after midnight, and put out this morning, goes through the evidence of corruption with Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas company that was paying Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, $1 million a year. The House Democrats have argued, they built their whole case on the proposition there's zero evidence of corruption, that it was phony and frivolous and a sham to investigate Burisma. Well, that is an absurd proposition. And so in the podcast last night, I tried to walk through systematically, here's all the facts, here's all the evidence of corruption, and any president has the authority to, and in fact a responsibility to investigate corruption, particularly when it goes potentially to the highest levels of government. Vice President Joe Biden directly changing U.S. foreign policy and threatening the government of Ukraine, potentially in order to benefit his son to the tune of $1 million a year. That is serious evidence of corruption. And so if the media are going to be partisan players, we've got to find ways to get around them and get people the information and tools to know what's really going on.
What are the long-term effects of playing politics, using the impeachment process to play politics?
I think it could have very harmful effects because impeachment was meant to be an extraordinary remedy. The problem is that the House Democrats have impeached Donald Trump because they hate him. They don't have the facts. They haven't proven their case. But if this is the standard going forward, we may well be in a world where every president going forward is going to be impeached whenever you have a House of Representatives controlled by the opposing party. That what the House Democrats are doing is they're using impeachment as a tool of partisan warfare. And I think that's wrong. I think that's an abuse of the Constitution. And I also think it's dangerous that we don't need impeachment ripping the country apart over and over and over again. And so I wish they hadn't gone down this road. And I'm very concerned about the precedent it's going to set for the next president and the president after that.
Iran has not been in the news during all of this because impeachment has dominated the cycle. I know you have been hawkish on relations, on how we should handle Iran. Where are we with that?
Well, I think we are in a much better place than we were before. As you know, the president ordered a strike and took out Soleimani. Soleimani was the most dangerous terrorist on the face of the planet. He was directly responsible for the murder of at least 603 U.S. servicemen and women. He had spent decades funding, orchestrating terror attacks on Americans, funding, orchestrating Hamas, Hezbollah, and taking him out made America safer. Now, Iran is profoundly dangerous, and their threat has not gone away. They are the leading state sponsor of terrorism, and I think we can expect they will continue to be that. And you know, my view on foreign policy, look, I think Donald Trump has done quite well in this regard, and I've spent a lot of time talking with him and urging him to take the path he's had. I think we should be very reluctant to get involved overseas. I think it was a mistake in the George W. Bush years to invade Iraq. I don't think the job of our military is to invade foreign countries and try to turn them into democratic utopias. That's not what our servicemen and women sign up to do. What is the job of our military is to keep America safe and to kill our enemies who are trying to murder Americans. And so I've described my foreign policy views as a non-interventionist hawk. which is I don't want to get involved unnecessarily, but where the national security interest of the United States is at stake, where there's a real threat to American lives, we need to also be strong and be willing to defend America. I think taking out Soleimani, addressing the threat of Iran, does exactly that. Contrast that with the Obama administration, the Iran nuclear deal, where they sent over $100 billion to Iran. They quite literally sent the funds that fueled Iran's terrorist activities. You know, the missiles they fired at our soldiers were, in a very real sense, paid for by the billions of dollars that Obama allowed to flow into Iran. I think that's the wrong approach, and so I'm glad we're standing up and defending our country.
Senator, I know you need to go. I'll ask you to answer in just a yes or no. I know you're concerned about what's going on with China and Wuhan. I'm wondering if you would support a resolution to change the name from coronavirus to the Kung Flu.
You know what? I'll let you lead the charge on that one.
Yeah, let me not get you in trouble. Thank you, Senator Ted Cruz.
You're listening to...
the problem is that the House Democrats have impeached Donald Trump because they hate him.
The Michael Berry Show.